Native Americas, 1500 before the Common Era. Historians study human behavior. We try to identify the actors, the actions they took, and what motivated them. There are many ways to look at this. Different historians have different approaches. At the beginning of this class, I introduced a model for you, that humans decide on their actions based on the problems they think they have. Humans run into an obstacle, they develop solutions to overcome that obstacle. And so over time, humans develop institutionalized behavior, patterns of behavior that guide their interaction with the world around them and to the people around them. But over time, those problems change. Humans, though, have a hard time changing their behavior to adapt to the new problems. It's often a very slow and laborious project. When societies break down, that's corruption. This is not your moral corruption of stealing, killing, murdering. No. Too often those are normal human behaviors and accepted by society. We're talking about behaviors that no longer work, when a problem is not getting solved. That is corruption. So humans will continue with their ancestral ways as long as they don't encounter a problem. When their ancestral ways fail to solve a problem, they're either going to adapt to a new way of acting, or they're going to try to keep doing the same thing over and over again and failing. Human behavior evolved over a long period of time as the species itself evolved. Humans have a common ancestor with the other great apes around 15 million years ago. Humans started walking on two legs about 4 million years ago. Obviously, that resulted in a change in behavior. So there's an evolutionary change, a physical change in the human body that allows humans to do something differently. But along the way, there are also then mental or cultural changes that allow humans to do different things even though their physical form remains relatively the same. About 2.5 million years ago, humans started using stone tools. That was a mental change that accompanied the biological change of having an opposable thumb. Humans were able to manipulate rocks and have those rocks become useful. Around 1.5 million years ago, humans discovered fire. And so fire then became a useful tool for keeping warm, running off predators, cooking meat, burning down a forest. About 100,000 years ago, humans started burying their dead. This was obviously a mental change, not simply a physical change. It didn't take much to bury someone. Didn't take a lot of tools, didn't take a lot of strength. And so this was a mental effort that signified a human mental change in how they looked at themselves and their environment. Another mental change came around 35,000 years ago. This was the discovery of art. Humans began painting on walls and leaving their mark behind them. Right about here, though, somewhere after 30,000 before the Common Era and 20,000 before the Common Era, there's a cultural diffusion break with the Americas. About the same time that there's a domestication of animals. That there's a divide between behaviors in Europe, Africa, and Asia, and then the Americas. Something changed in human development that marked this divide between the Americas and the rest of the world. In Europe, we've already seen the development of metallurgy. In Asia Minor, that technology spread, first with copper, then with bronze, and finally with iron. This technology never made it to the Americas. The peoples in the Americas were biologically similar to the people in Europe, Asia, and Africa. And so this was a mental or a cultural break. The technology that developed in the Eurasian continent never made it to North and South America. Another technology that never made it there was the wheel, 4000 before the Common Era. Writing did develop in the Americas, but there's a clear distinction between Eurasian writing and the writing we find in the Americas. So what's going on here? Well, humans have a problem. We're not sure what that problem was because it was well before writing, but we know what the solution was. The solution was running away from home. Maybe that running away from home was because of an overbearing parent, an overbearing mom, an overbearing dad. Maybe the problem was a lack of food. There was a drought or a blight in an area that forced people to go look for food somewhere else. Maybe there was a neighboring tribe who were just jerks and came in and drove them away. But however you look at it, human migration is a behavior that stretches way back that allowed humans to start in Africa and move across all of the continents. This map is color-coded, associated with the time frames at which humans moved across the major continents. And so somewhere around 200,000 before the Common Era, humans moved out of Africa. Human evolution started in Africa, and then humans moved out of that continent into Central Asia. And you'll see then across to Saudi Arabia, around 70,000 years before the Common Era, into Asia Minor, 50,000 years before the Common Era, into Spain and France, about 45,000 years before the Common Era. But before they ever got to Europe, humans started moving across towards the east, moving from Saudi Arabia into Persia, into India, and all the way down to Australia. The Australians colonized their continent well before humans went into Europe, probably because of weather. The climate in Europe is much colder. Humans are naked apes, and so the coastlines along the Indian Ocean and down into the East Indies are much more pleasant than trying to go up north. If you look at the map, you'll see some of the last places of human settlements and migration were up into the northern regions of Europe. It was just probably too darn cold. So humans moved across out of Africa, across to Australia. They moved north into Asia and Europe, and then finally across to the Americas. And so you see that date there, which is 25,000 years before the Common Era. Somewhere around that time, humans began making the crossing from Europe to Asia. So up to 25,000 years ago, there is a shared set of human behaviors that were shaped by physical geography. Physical geography can provide both obstacles and opportunities for human beings. Obstacles include deserts, mountains, oceans, and ice. These are difficult to survive. There's a difficulty in finding food. And so Darwinian evolution tells us humans, like other species, need food to survive. It's a rare bird that's going to find a place to survive in a desert, a mountain, an ocean, or ice. On the other hand, there are plenty of opportunities in estuaries, rivers, coastlines. Humans found abundant food there with very little competition, or competition that would actually eat them. So humans moved along estuaries, riverbeds, coastlines. Human migration followed those routes as humans left their village and moved to someplace else. Along the way, they found caves and overhangs, some type of natural shelter from the weather. And so these became prime searching spots for archaeologists and paleontologists trying to find evidence of early human development. humans left behind human geography. Human geography refers to the ability of humans to shape or transform or change the natural environment. It's pretty obvious the difference between a physical change and a human change once you know how to look. And so archaeologists, paleontologists are trained extensively to see evidence that humans shape the environment. And when they do, they often find technology. Technology refers to tools that shape the natural environment. They augment human skills and human behavior. And so human technology leaves a mark on the physical environment and allows archaeologists and anthropologists and paleontologists to study people who left no written records. And so we know that about 25 million years ago there was a Stone Age. And that Stone Age technology traveled with all humans all the way around the world. Also accompanying the Stone Age, a million years later, then was the use of fire, the ability to make fire and keep a fire going and move with the fire. Early human technology and behaviors then center around hunting and gathering, trying to find food. And so those stone tools were used to hunt game and to gather berries, gather roots in order to survive. The big question, though, comes around the domestication of plants and animals. When did that occur? Previous generations of historians were really confident that it happened somewhere around 8,000 years ago. New finds are telling us that that date could be pushed back to maybe 20,000 years ago or 23,000 years ago. Not really sure. But it just so happens that that domestication of plants and animals was happening about the same time that humans were crossing over into the Americas. This accounts for the cultural break between Europe and Asia and Africa with the Americas. Overwhelmingly, though, the physical geography shaped human behavior. This was the biggest problem humans had to face. They didn't have the ability to transform their environment whole scale. And so they made modifications to the environment, but all the time they had to keep in mind that Mother Nature was much more powerful than them. This resulted in a diversity of human societies. We've already seen in Europe and in Asia, in the Middle East, that human societies took a variety of forms. It's no surprise then, when we cross over into the Americas, that we find the same thing. Native Americans, while they have this label from outsiders as being Native Americans, were not one peoples. They were multiple peoples living over a broad set of continents. They developed a wide variety of solutions to the physical obstacles they found and taking advantage of the opportunities that their climate and environment provided. We're going to focus on three aspects of this story: the pre-human Americas, the first Americans, and finally Native American diversity, to see how physical geography prevented human migration into the Americas. Once the first humans got into the Americas, they had that Stone Age technology that allowed them to manipulate their environment in ways to settle down and make a living and eventually thrive. But not all of these peoples were the same. They were incredibly diverse. And so as diverse as the environments were in the Americas, so was the diversity of Native American societies. It was no different than what we've already seen in Europe, the Mediterranean, the Middle East, or China.